Hello and what's up peeps, this is the Geek Artist formerly known as Goldface Yakuza, and welcome to another episode of Photoshop Basics tutorial for beginners. Fun fact, you're watching the first official video under this new brand, the Geek Artist. Now if you are a beginner and you're looking for a good guide to getting started with this magical software and mastering it, and you just came across this video, then you're in the right place. So stick around, bear with me, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Click on the bell icon so that you get a notification every time I upload a new video. And the same goes for the phone app as well. If you're someone who finds the software difficult, sophisticated, confusing, overwhelming, let me tell you this, I've been there. It's normal. All you have to do is constantly practice and explore around. And believe it or not, every time you open the software and randomly play around with the tools, you're gonna learn something new every time, every day. Photoshop has been the love of my life since 2010. Yeah, it was difficult at first, but we're happily together now. And it can be the same for you too. All you have to do is follow my guide, follow my tutorials, and by the end of this course, you're gonna be a pro just like me, or even better, who knows. Now I'm gonna split this lesson into two parts, or else it could be a huge video. The first part will focus on getting started, setting up your canvas, and then we'll dive straight into all the different tools and the applications. I'll cover as many tools as I can in this part, and then the remaining ones in the second part. So subscribe and stay tuned. I hope you find this video helpful.
Let's go!
So the version that I'm using is Adobe Photoshop CC 2015. If you're using a newer version, there's nothing to worry about because the updates and changes are minimum. And even if you're using a slightly older version, you can still easily follow me because again, the differences are barely noticeable. So we'll start off with the layout. Now on the top we have the menu bar where we get all these different menus, and on the left we have the toolbar or tool tab or toolbox as some like to call it, and on the right we have a few more panels. Like over here we have the layer panel, layer tab, where you can create new layers, add new layers, arrange them and organize them. Above that we have the color palette from where we can pick colors, and above that there's a drop down menu where we get a range of selection of different layout types. Like the essential is like the best of everything, you get a bit of everything, and it's the best layout for beginners. I mean, you get everything that you probably need. And second up we have 3D, which is something we're not concerned with at the moment. You can create basic 3D models and 3D text and texture them with this. And we have motion, which is animation. Basically you can add new frames and keyframes and animate your subject. And then we have painting, which is for digital painting and illustration. You have the layer and the brushes. And then we have photography, where you can crop and edit your photographs. You can color correct them, maybe a bit of photo manipulation, tweak the brightness, contrast, saturation, and HDR toning and all of that stuff. And finally we have typography. As you can understand, this is basically for text-based graphic designing. We have all the text settings and options. So we'll switch back to essentials, which we'll be using for this lesson. Now, just in order to make sure that we're on the same page and I don't make you confused with things that you probably don't find on your computer, please just go to Windows menu, go to Workspace, make sure the Essentials default is selected. Again, go to Workspace, Essential, and reset Essential. So yeah, so now both of us see the exact same layout, so there's no chance of getting confused. And finally we come back to the menu bar. The three menus that you'll find yourself using a lot are the first three: File, Edit, and Image. Now from File you'll find yourself using New a lot for creating new canvases, Open for importing files, and finally Save and Save As for saving your document. Then we'll come to Edit, where you'll mostly be using Undo, step backward, step forward, sometimes cut, copy, paste, and most importantly Transform. Now Transform is something that gives you different choices of cropping and changing the scale of your image or parts of your image. It gives you options such as rotating, flipping, a perspective distort, warp, distort, skew, and a few others. And finally, we come to image, where you'll mostly find yourself using uh, adjustments. Adjustments gives you all the different color correction options, such as brightness, contrast, saturation, HDR toning, levels, curves, and all that. And you can also use image size. It's mainly useful for changing the shape and dimension and resolution of your image, even after you've created your canvas and already started working on it. So that's something you can use. And finally, you have image rotation, which lets you rotate or flip the entire canvas altogether. And that's all. Like, these are mainly the menus that you'll find yourself using a lot, like very frequently. Now, with that out of the way, we'll jump straight into setting up the canvas. So for creating a new canvas or a new file, you'll need to go to File menu and click on New. Now this will open up this panel where you get to type the name. I'm gonna go with demo, and from presets you get to again select a bunch of presets, which I don't recommend. Just go with customs. I'm gonna go with standard 180p, that is 1920 180 pixels. And for the size, you have a lot of options. You can add pixel, inches, centimeters, millimeters, and all that. Just go with pixels. I mean, it's less confusing and more universal. For resolution, if you're designing something that'll probably end up on the internet, if it's for the web, then what's recommended is 72 pixels per inch. But if you're designing something that's probably going to be printed, then it's recommended to use 300. But I personally recommend using 300 every time, because it's best that you get render the best quality out of your work all the time, and the rest remain the same. So with that out of the way, let's just click on OK, and there we go. We have our new canvas called demo. Now that we have our new canvas open, we can start working on it. Now here's something that I really recommend. That is, instead of working directly on this background layer, let's just let it be background and always create a new layer. Just come to the bottom of the layer tab and click on this. This will create a new layer, new transparent layer. And whatever you want to paint, draw, sketch, make sure you do it on this. What it does is it makes it much easier to separate all the different parts of your design and move them around freely without affecting the surrounding space, surrounding pixels, such as the background or whatever. And you can create as many layers as you want for all the different elements that you want to add to your illustration. And so yeah, this is a very tiny piece of advice that you should take, and believe me, you'll do yourself a big favor. You'll be helping yourself out a lot by doing this. Make things much easier for you. Now let's come to the tools, all the different tools on the left. First, we have this basic arrow key that mainly helps you move things around. And for example, let's say on this new layer I sketch something, just some random scribbles. The arrow key will help you move it around like that freely. So basically that's what it does. Now we come to the second tool, which is the Marquee tool. So if you right click on this, you'll get 4 more options of all different Marquee tools. So in order to make you understand this, I'm gonna again make some random scribbles on this blank layer, and I'm gonna select the first Marquee tool, that is rectangular Marquee tool, which helps you select a rectangular or a square like area. And you can, with the help of the arrow tool, you can move this bit around. As you can see, a square selection area is being moved around. Not only that, you can use the selection tool to fill certain areas. Let's say I want to fill this square selected area with color. I have black color selected over here. In order to fill it, there's a very easy keyboard shortcut, that is Alt Backspace. If I click on Alt Backspace, it fills it up with this color. Only that selected area. If you want to select more areas, like further selection, Alt backspace, and there you go, color selected. If I want to deselect this, I'll use the keyboard shortcut Control D and it gets deselected. Now let's come to the second option, that is elliptical marquee tool. As you can see, it's circular or elliptical selection. Click and drag, leave it, and with the help of the arrow tool we can move it around. And Control D, deselect. Now we come to the second one, the third one I mean, which is single row marquee tool. And this is something there's not much use of. I never use this. You can mainly use it for guide frames. Let's say you're tracing something from some artwork, and you can use this as a guide frame or grids to guide you. You can just click on anywhere just once, and it'll give you this 1 pixel selection, like a line of selection that's just 1 pixel long, and you can fill it with color like Alt backspace and it gets filled like that. Doesn't have, and similarly for the single column tool, Alt backspace, and again it gets filled with color. Now if you're doing pixel art or pixel illustration where you need to make single line, single straight lines or whatever, you can use this. But other than that, I don't see any major use for this tool at all. So yeah, pretty much like useless stuff. Next, I'm going to show you how to undock your canvas. Now let's say you have multiple documents open. I'm going to open a new document, and let's say you want to paint something by looking at a reference, and you want the reference somewhere around here so that you don't have to constantly switch between canvases or tabs. You can just have one open right here that you can look at all the time and draw on this. So what you can do is you can go to the tab that you want to use as reference, and you can just click on the tab, click title bar, and click and drag it down, and it'll just undock itself. You can move it around. You can increase the size if you want slightly, and just drag and place it right there. And you can just look at it, whatever reference you want to keep there, and paint accordingly on your main canvas. You can do the same for your main canvas as well. You can do it for all the canvases that you have open. Just move them around, and if you want to bring it back to where it was, slowly drag it up there and it'll just capture itself. Yeah, like that. I'm gonna do this for the other one as well. So yeah, now we'll come to this third tool option, which is Lasso Tool. And you can, if you right click on it, you'll see that there are like 3 options for Lasso Tool. First one is the basic Lasso Tool. I'm going to show you an example. Let's say you have something of a complex shape and you want to cut this portion out. You want to select this manually and cut it out, or do whatever with it. So it's just like painting. It's like drawing. So we're gonna paint along the edges with this. I'm doing it pretty fast now, so it's probably gonna be a little messy. So now that part is selected, and you can just click on it and move it around, as you can see. Yeah, you select it. If you want to bring it over to another canvas, you can just drag it on top of the name and leave it, and yeah, it's here. You can move it around. Yep. So that's how this works. Now the thing about this is, if you're using this to select a very complex shape, it needs a lot of patience. Sometimes you can end up leaving the selection. For example, let's say you're selecting this and halfway there you just by mistake you just leave the cursor and that's what happens. It just gets messed up. So you need a lot of patience for this in case you're selecting something of a complex shape. Now on top we have a few more options, such as this. This is a one-time selection. If you select something, let's say I just selected this, and now I want to select the other part. So what happens is that the first selection gets deselected. So this is not recommended. This is very annoying. So the second option, according to my opinion, is the best. You can create as many selection as you want, and they just get added onto the main selection. And if you want to deselect some part from it, you can use the second option, which is like subtract tool. You can select the part that you don't want, and it gets deselected. It gets subtracted or removed from the main selection. And finally we have this. Now this is a little awkward. The thing is that, let's say you have two different selection areas, separate selection areas. Let's see, you have this and then you have this. Now as I leave this, what's going to happen is that between these two selected areas, the one that is common, the place where it merges or overlaps, that's going to be the final selection. So if I leave it, there you go. The common area, the overlapping area, is your final resultant selection. Yeah, there's that. Now we will come to the third, that is Polygonal Lasso Tool. Now Polygonal Lasso Tool is something that you use for a shape that has a lot of straight lines, not something curvy like this. So for example, this, you click over here once and you can just drag the second option like this. Click, click, drag, click, hover, click, and yeah, select neat and clean. You can move it around, neat and clean. There's that. Now I'm going to come to Magnetic Lasso Tool. Now this is something that comes in very handy when you're dealing with a very complex shape. So for that I'm gonna use an example of one of my illustrations. Yeah, it's from the TV show End of the Fucking World. Let's say I want to select this guy's head. So the options that I have are manually selecting it like this with the normal lasso tool. It's gonna take a lot of time. Yeah, boring and time consuming. What I can also use is Magnetic Lasso Tool. How it works is that it just picks up all the areas by itself. Whenever there's a big difference in color anywhere, this is probably not the best option. I'm going to use a different file. Now this is one of my fan arts of the Netflix TV show Stranger Things Season 2. Now how this tool works is that it automatically sticks to the edges where there's a lot of color difference. Like let's say there's a lot of difference between this bright tone and then there's black and then there's a slightly duller tone. So what it does, if I want to start selecting from here, you can see just gets stuck to the edges by itself. I'm not even clicking on anything, just doing it all by itself. Yeah. Now if there are parts where the thing is licking or I don't like the selection, I can always go back by click on backspace. Every time I click on backspace, the points get deleted, so I can retrace my steps forward. Now if there are places where I want to go with manuals, for example the tool, I can always just go on clicking to make a manual selection, and then I can just continue the way I was, letting the magnet do all the job. And you can do it even fast if you want, just race your way through. Oh, backspace and continue. As you can see, it saves a lot of time, and I'm not gonna select the whole thing, so I'm probably gonna just cut back to where we started. And yeah, that selection is complete. I can move the leg around easily. I'm going to take it to the new document. Oh, it's a pretty big one. So as you can see, it's a pretty clean selection right here. Yeah, pretty clean, neat and clean. And it didn't even take me a minute. If I were to do this with the normal Lasso Tool, it was gonna take me a lot of time. So yeah, magnetic selection tool helps. That's how it helps. Now next up we come to more selection tool, that is we have quick selection tools and magic wand tool. Now I'm going to start off with magic wand because this is simply fun. This is very fun. So what it does is it selects the areas that have more or less similar color tone. For example, in this illustration I'm going to select the sky. All I'm going to do is click on the sky once, and it's just going to pick up a lot of area that involves the sky. If I can just go on clicking on these areas, and it's just gonna keep picking up the colors like that. And yeah, that saves a lot of time again. Now let's come to tolerance. Now how the range or degree of selection sensitivity stands on. It basically depends on tolerance. If I decrease the tolerance to something as low as 10, then yeah, it picks up a very small patch of areas. But if I make it 100 and click on one, it's gonna select everything, like a lot of range. That is, the sensitivity increases, and yeah, it selects a lot of area. Like for example, I'm clicking on the white or very light pale yellow, and it's also selecting darker yellows and lighter the shade of orange. But if I bring it down to 5 and then select it, you can see it only selects that much area that has white around it. Yeah, and if I wanna use the quick selection tool, it acts like a paintbrush, you can say. You can just keep on painting, and yeah, it just selects it like that. And now if you want to select the arms, or let's say the knife, oops, it's negative. I need to click on the add to selection option and paint. It's a little slow, it takes a bit of time, more heavy on your processor and RAM, but yeah, eventually get there. You're doing the same thing just like magic selection, except you can have more manual control over what you want and what you don't want. And for example, I ended up selecting a bit of the knife area that I don't want. I wanted to remove it. Then I can click on this subtract from selection option, paint on it a bit, and it gets subtracted, it gets removed from selection, just painting around. And I'll be covering the remaining tools on the next episode, which comes out next week, Sunday. So subscribe and stay tuned. And as you can see, I'm not going into too much detail with all the different tools because there are many options and settings for all these different tools, and it's not possible to cover everything in one basics intro tutorial series. So yeah, I'll be making separate tutorials for separate tools where I'll go into full depth. I'll cover every detail of how things work. It's gonna be a bit advanced level, so I recommend that you follow this basics tutorial first, this part, and the second part that's coming out next week. And once you're settled in, once you're familiar with all the different tools, you have a basic idea of how all the tools work, you can start following the more advanced tutorials on the tools. So until next time, goodbye.